Hello, everyone, and welcome to CSM Mastermind. My name is Andrew Marks, co-founder of Success Hacker and our Success Coaching Training Program. We are back for our monthly live webcast today discussing strategies to help product teams understand customer needs better. This free learning event is being hosted by Success Coaching, the world leader in customer success professional development training, with more than 3,800 graduates in more than 52 countries. We just added 12 new courses under our Level 4 program to our subscription offering. Our popular virtual instructor-led certification boot camps are running monthly, and our last 12-week coaching program of the year begins September 17th with the early registration discount ending August 31st. So sign up now. You could say we've been busy following through on our commitments to be constantly producing new content and programs that are geared towards helping anyone with customer-facing responsibilities up-level their skill sets. I'm also really excited about some great new courses and programs that we're going to be rolling out in the second half of 2020. Find out more at successcoaching.co. And Ashley has put the website in the chat. For those of you who haven't participated in one of these events before, this is a live and unscripted discussion where we dig into a single topic relevant to customer success. This right here is the only script that I follow during our entire hour together. Regardless of the company that you work for, the details of your customer-facing role, or the size of the customers you deal with, we aim to pick topics that are going to be practical and useful to you. We also encourage you to suggest topics that you'd like to hear about. I still have a huge open schedule for 2021. So if you have a suggestion, please direct message me on LinkedIn. Connect with me and also message me on LinkedIn. Don't be shy. The schedule for our upcoming CSM Mastermind events, along with a whole bunch of other resources, can be found at successcoaching.co. So please check that out. Hi, Toby. There is no discount code. It's on the website. All you got to do is go on the website. We'll post a replay of this webinar along with a transcription by early next week on our website. There's a lot of thought leadership out there, along with a lot of theories about how to deliver customer success. This series allows us to focus on the practical and give you real-world advice, tips, techniques, and shared experiences from those in the wild that are practicing customer success on a daily basis. And to do that, we invite 3 participants from the customer success community to join me for a roundtable discussion. These are people that have been recommended to us as being great at their craft, and we ask them to share their experiences and perspectives. We will be taking questions later during the webcast, so please use that Q&A functionality found at the bottom of your screen to ask or upvote a question. I'm very excited to welcome our panel for today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So let's get started with Audrey. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks for having me today. Hi, I'm Audrey Vandenbroek, Senior Director of Customer Success and Support here at Issue. And Issue is a content creation and distribution platform used by content creators and marketers who wish to create and distribute content in multiple formats across multiple devices to reach audiences everywhere. And I'm happy to be here.
Thanks, Audrey. Glad that you're here as well. Bethany, you're up.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm Bethany. I am with Cisco, and I support our WebEx collaboration portfolio. No judgment here that we're using Zoom today, but similar virtual meeting experience. And I support enterprise-level customers. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Bethany. Glad that you're here, and I appreciate you giving in and using Zoom today. And last but not least, Jake.
Hello, I'm Jake, and I'm a Customer Success Manager at Atlassian. I'm focused on the Status Page product. Status Page helps other software teams communicate with their customers during outages and scheduled maintenance. So a lot of support and success teams use our product to create a better customer experience during software problems.
Excellent. Thanks again, Jake, for being here. So let's get to the topic for today. The customer success team ends up with the most customer face time of any other organization in a company. CSMs are there to understand customer needs, objectives, and desired outcomes, and help connect the dots between what customers need and what your offerings can do for them. But it's a two-way street. It's not just about helping customers fit into the product and ensure they're getting value and achieving their desired outcomes. It's a tremendous opportunity for companies to better understand how customers are using their product offering and what they need out of the product now and in the future to ensure that they're getting value out of their investment. From feature requests to product enhancements to validating or expanding the ideal customer profile, customer success is in a unique position to provide that customer voice back to the product team and within the context of user stories and business impact, both for the customer as well as for you. So let's talk about that, about how customer success can effectively interact with the product team to ensure that customers' voices are being heard and understood. So who wants to get us started?
Andrew, I will kick things off. I actually thought of a great analogy, so I'm going to share a quick story, which may be true or may be a fable. You can do your research and decide. But I think it's going to give you a great real-world example of two teams that may or may not be talking to one another and how that ultimately displays and affects that end user customer experience. So I have a question, and you're gonna just have to answer out loud, but I have a good feeling of what the answer will be. I'd like to know how many of you drive green cars. Now I've already rehearsed this, and I know my fellow panelist Jake does drive a green car, but I'm gonna guess it's probably less than 5% of everybody on this call. Okay, we don't see them that often. So here's my story. In the early 1990s, Volvo was the up-and-coming car company. Now they are a European, company, and they were starting to build a reputation around being the safe vehicle. All of their R&D was put into making sure it was the safest vehicle. It surpassed what the U.S. government said needed to be in order to be on the roads. So it was doing very well in Europe. And the Europeans really loved green cars, and so that's what they started manufacturing. So they said, I think there's an opportunity that we can start selling these in the U.S. So they call over to the U.S. and start talking to the sales team and the account teams and say, we're going to ship you over some cars. They're selling like hotcakes here. We think you'll do good with them as well. So they shipped over a bunch of fleet of cars, and at first there wasn't a lot of movement, but sometimes it takes a while to get your marketing and your campaigns and why you should drive a Volvo, right? So after a couple of months, they also started selling like hotcakes, and they could not turn around quickly enough getting cars back over to us. And so finally, one day, there was a conversation. Usually what happens, right? Let's have a mid-year review. Let's have an end of the year review. What went well, what didn't. So we waited a long time, or not we, Volvo sales and management, and then the actual European team distributor saying, hey, we're on for next year. We're going to send you double what we sent you this year. And they said, no. US said, please do not send us any more green cars. I said, well, why not? They sold amazingly. We already got a fleet ready to go. And they said, no, we had to discount those. We lost money because they were so ugly. Nobody wanted to buy them. So we sold them to them for pennies on the dollar to get them off of our lot. And you guys keep sending them to us. So what's happening here is the company's losing money. They're not building their brand. We'll take it because it's cheaper and it's not my ideal car, and I'll probably never buy another one, but I got it for pennies on the dollar. And the product team never got input back to say, what is our target audience in the US? Is it different from our European customers? So it sounds silly, right? But it's the core of why we're talking today. We have a product team and a customer success team, and we have different priorities and goals. And if we're not communicating to one another, if we look at statistics alone, well, they were selling cars like nobody's business. Okay, we weren't looking maybe at the profit, but you sold millions and millions of cars. So that communication wasn't happening on why were we selling cars? What do they like about them? What do they not? Are we thinking about the future? So I think that's a great entryway in today's discussion. So Jake, Audrey, any thoughts on that scenario? I know, Jake, do you still have your green card? Do you still love it?
I do still love my green car, yeah. I think that's a great way to set up the conversation. And it's a great example, too, of what happens as businesses grow. They get further and further away from the customer, and all of a sudden they're looking at dashboards more than they're talking to the customer. And I think that's a big problem. So I've seen this definitely in places I've worked. So that's only part of the story, right? The dashboards, the data, the metrics, the sales metrics are only part of the story. You have to keep talking to your customers.
Right. And I think, Bethany, you mentioned the key phrase target audiences. And I think it's crucial that product and CS and the rest of the organization understands who their target audience is. Because if you don't know who they are, you don't know what kind of feedback we need to retrieve. We don't know what feedback needs to be communicated and disseminated around the organization. It doesn't do any service to products trying to understand what the target audience needs in order to be successful when they use a product or choose a service from any organization. So knowing your target audience is also key.
Well, I think, and building on that, I think it's not just understanding what your ideal customer profile is, your target audience, however you want to refer to it, but that's not a static thing. You need to constantly be measuring that and monitoring that, because quite frankly, maybe there was a group of people initially that really liked the green Volvo cars, right? But over time, their tastes changed, their needs evolved, right? And because there was no communication on either side of the fence, in that example, there's blame on both sides, from the people who were selling it as well as the people who were building it, because neither of them took the initiative to reach out, right? And I think that there's and that leads kind of to that next question: what can a CSM do when product isn't or doesn't want to listen, right? What type of strategies have you used in the past to be able to surface that type of feedback and customer stories back to them?
Well, Mark, I think, Andrew, sorry, I'm going to probably end up...
It's all right. I got two first names. I hear it all the time.
It happens.
That's all right. It's all right.
Okay, Andrew. I think that there's a couple of points to your question of how do you talk to product teams or that aren't listening or whatnot. But to even back it up for a second, when we've already mentioned target audience before, and Audrey also advocated for that, we want whatever product we're supporting to be able to solve everybody's problem, right? We can scale it, we can make it for small businesses, big businesses, single-handedly. But the truth of the matter is we're just servicing ourselves, and we're putting more work on our product teams if we go in saying that it is not a one-size-fits-all. Are there things that we can do to make it fit? Yes. Does that impact the whole experience? Yes. So first, identifying who is my target audience. If we keep going on this green car example, right, and I have 10 customers, and I decide on a touch point with them to say, hey, in an ideal world, what color background would you like for your chat system, right? Because I do virtual stuff, virtual conference stuff. And 8 of them told me white because it's the most professional, and 1 of them told me green, and 1 of them told me pink. I feel it's my responsibility to say, absolutely, I will take this feedback back to our BU, but you also, as a customer who's also in business and understands how business works, the likelihood of this being implemented, that is not what the bulk of our customers want. And why do you take it a step further? When they tell you they want something, why is it that you want this? If it's really because the end goal is something different, right? They say, well, we want pink because our logo is these 2 colors and we thought it would look cool. Then maybe we can keep asking follow-up questions to get, did you really want pink, or did you just want something to complement your colors? So maybe what they want really isn't even what they want. You as a CSM are whether we want to call ourselves experts or not, that's what we are in our product and what we support. So we need to give those questions back and get down to the root cause or the root analysis of what are you really trying to obtain, and it might not be what they asked for. And then once it is something that you think is tangible or that you will give that feedback, set those expectations up, and you need to let the customer know, I'll take this back to the BU, this is the process, and go through that whole process of making sure you close the feedback group. Feedback loop. I could go on for all of this, but I want to give other people an opportunity to talk. So Audrey or Jake, pick that up from here.
I think what's concerning to most product teams and to any organization is feedback fatigue. We collect so much feedback every day, every week. What do we do with this information? So I think what we've tried to institute here at Issue is customer research cadences. So once a quarter, whatever makes sense for your particular organization, to do a survey and to poll what you think your target audience is or should be if you're trying to acquire a new business, is to have, a set of questions that we want answered. So that way it's more structured. We know how to funnel the data. We know how to interpret the data versus having rapid fire. Hey, I just got off the phone with a great customer story. I want to tell you this. Okay. How does that compare to the last customer story you just told me 20 minutes ago after your previous conversation? So I think there's some fear in that and how to manage and alleviate some of that pressure to want to execute and want to do, because ultimately at the end of the day, we want to provide the best product and service for our customers. Our customers is what keeps the lights on. But I think there is a structured, more...
there needs to be a process. You need to have a process that's laid out, a plan.
A plan. Right? And I think if CSM products and engineering, they all come together and work on this together, it'll definitely alleviate some of that pressure and stress.
Yeah, I think there's also something to be said too to the relationship between CSM and product. Like, what's the reason the product team's not listening? Is it because you don't have a good relationship with them? Are they not understanding? Do they not have empathy for the customer? So, I mean, my advice is to balance persistence with not being too annoying, right? I mean, the more you hit the product team with that sort of repetitive piece of feedback, feature request, whatever it might be, the more it'll bubble up to the top. But you have to do that in a way that doesn't come off as annoying and doesn't hurt your relationship with the product team. If the product team doesn't have empathy for the customer, maybe bring the customer into an all hands meeting. We've done that before. We've had a customer from the UK dial into a Zoom call, and there he was in front of the entire team of 30 people, speaking to them about his pain points, and that really resonated with the team.
There seems to be in some situations, and I've experienced this firsthand in companies that I've worked for, as well as clients that I've worked with, this hesitation from anyone from product, even up to, in one instance, the CEO, that if we ask our customers what they want, they're going to assume that we're going to give it to them. Mm-hmm. And I think part of especially if you've got a challenge with the product team, part of that is customer success explaining the product. Listen, this is not for us to write down a wish list and for you guys to have to create everything that the customer is asking for. We have to do this within reason. We can't. It's not realistic to give them, give a particular customer everything. But when you have a request and that you've done your due diligence and you've wrapped a story around that, a use case, and you've attached the upside potential, the downside potential, and you've looked across your entire customer base and said, hey, I think that this is something that would be good for the entire population. And then you take, when you're able to take that to product, you can have a really intelligent conversation about the ask and be able to back it up with facts that support, inserting that potentially into the product roadmap at some point in the near future, if it makes sense.
Yeah, and you just hit the word I was going to say, which was roadmap. I don't know, as customer success managers, I think we might be all over the place as far as how involved we get in. There's two roadmaps here. You have your product roadmap, and then you have your customer's roadmap. And you need to be very keen on both of them, okay? Because this is going to help the conversation when you have around, I want your feedback, but at the same side, I'm not guaranteeing everything's going to fit in with what you want to our roadmap. The customer needs to share with you, and I would say you'd be surprised, but if you're all CSMs, you're not surprised how many customers don't have a roadmap. They know what they want right now, but they're not thinking 4, 5, 6 quarters out. So when you take your product roadmap and say, look, how does this fit in with your business goals and the things you're trying to achieve? And then they might start thinking, oh, that would work perfect, or I never thought about that, or that's not how we wanted to use this feature. Is there any room for, flexibility, etc.? And then you can get the conversation going, and you're not setting up the expectation that everything that you want is going to make it into a release, but we are taking your feedback and applying it to what our vision is, knowing what your vision is, and seeing what can we do to help you get there, and still serve the mass of what our customer base is.
I like that. I like that term you use, conversation, because this very much needs to be a conversation, right? It needs to be a very consultative interaction, right? And you mentioned it earlier about using, asking why. So using tools like the 5 whys techniques to really understand what's driving the ask.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the jobs to be done framework too, which sort of is directly related with the 5 whys. That I think the famous example is people don't want a 1/4-inch drill, they want a 1/4-inch hole. So PMs, product teams really want to understand like the problem that customers are having, not the wish list.
But Jake, do they want the 1/4-inch hole? What else do they want out of the 1/4-inch hole? They want the picture hung.
Oh yeah,
right. They want Jake's been through
and the cherry on top.
They want the picture. They want the hole, but they also want the picture hung level on the wall. Right. Yeah, Jake's been through our training class. That's actually you made me smile because you're using the example from training.
But maybe
making me proud, Jake. Thank you.
There might be a new kit where you don't even have to drill a hole in the wall. So maybe if your ultimate goal was I want as least mess as possible, or I'm going to resell, so long term I don't want to have to patch up more work. So keep probing into those questions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And I think it's important to keep encouraging your counterparts in products to join us on phone conversations as often as we possibly can. I know that they won't be able to because we talk to customers all day, every day, but it would just be a benefit if they just heard everything and they can ask the questions in the product related way so that they can apply it. There's only so much that we can convey as customer success managers to really articulate what the customer needs and wants and their desires to fulfill their end goal to how products translates it. So at every opportunity, try to always have a product person with you if it's feasible.
I completely agree. In fact, I use those opportunities. We do a lot of research calls with our customers, and so I'm facilitating that quite a bit. And actually, I'll sneak in some opportunities for customers to, obviously we'll focus on the research, but at the end of the call, I always ask the customer to sort of, what else is on your mind and any other feedback. So that's an opportunity for the product team and the design team to build some empathy and with the customer around different areas of the product that we might not be focused on at the time.
I think once again, you need to when you're asking product to be involved in those conversations, I think you need to set the expectation with the customer as well as the product manager that, hey, we're not here to write down the laundry list. And as a customer success manager, if the customer starts pressing product to commitments and dates, you need to step in. I mean, talk about building an some internal relationships. You need to step in front of that and be that shield to product, right? And if you make that commitment going into the call and you demonstrate that protection, right, you're going to allay a lot of the fears that product has. And the next time you ask them to be on a call, they're going to be more likely to join you.
And you have to understand that you're often going to be, well, I don't want to say often, it depends on what your product is, but we can be the bearer of bad news. And we might say it's bad news, or I don't want to tell them we can't do this. But just as Andrew alluded to, long term, they're going to respect us more. They're going to be willing to talk to us because they know we're not just, yeah, that sounds great. Sure, I'll let them know. Like sometimes it's, no, this isn't feasible, or it's going to take a few quarters. But then that gives you an opportunity to say, so maybe there's another product in our portfolio that fits, or we don't really like workarounds, but maybe we can finagle this to get you what you need until we can support, what you're ultimately asking for. So I think being completely transparent, we want to represent our products well. We want them to fit your needs, but we understand we're not going to be able to do that for every single customer use case. But being honest with them of where we can and cannot support them, and then helping them come up with that solution. I think most customers are quite reasonable and will be very happy that they have a true partnership with somebody to know that they're not BSing, they're not sales, we're not sales, right? So we're giving them the honest truth and helping them long term.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned transparency. Sorry.
Go ahead, Audrey.
You mentioned transparency, Bethany, and I think that was spot on. The more that CS is aligned with products, knowing the vision of the roadmap, a quarter out, 5 years out, being able to articulate what that vision is to our customer, that will only also just boost the confidence in this is how we see it. This is how we feel you can be using our products down the line. This is why we're consulting with you today. the more information that we can provide upfront on that offensive side, the better, while also being able to play that defensive side and protecting our product and engineering teams. I think it's so crucial for every CSM to master.
Yeah, there's a balance, right?
Yes.
We want to be the voice of the customer, but we also have to be able and willing to push back, to give bad news, to drill down, to come up with workarounds. Achieving trusted advisors, that trusted advisor relationship, which we're all trying to achieve, is not all about saying yes. It's about being honest. It's about being transparent. Right? It's not about rolling over and saying yes every time a customer asks for something. Honestly, you're not a trusted advisor. You're just a vendor. That's a very transactional mindset. Let's. How about we take some questions? Should we take some questions?
Cool. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. So, first one from Srimathi. I'm sorry if I butchered your name, Srimathi. Hopefully I pronounced it correctly. Thank you, by the way, for the question. If the product team gives a bad experience to the customer, how should the customer success team handle it when the customer brings it up to CS? So we have a customer that's had a bad user experience, right? So how do you handle that news, that bad user experience news, and then hopefully route that feedback back to product and then back to the customer?
Yeah, I can speak to that one a little bit. I think the first thing you need to do is understand what happened. So if you can dig through the support ticket or whatever happened there, wherever the interaction was, work to understand that. And then, I've encountered this before where sometimes you have to go to the person's manager and say, hey, I think we have a training opportunity here. This sort of went south. Here's why. Here's what I think we could have done differently, and use that as an opportunity to not just point fingers and get somebody in trouble, but to improve the team and hopefully the customer experience next time.
I also think that regardless of what role we are in or what groups we work with, if we take it back to a psychological human connection, human relationship, words matter, right? And how we ask a question, it could be the same question, but how we ask it can be received two different ways. And I think that product support probably if you think about it, they get a lot of complaints their way, right? This didn't work. What were you thinking? Who knows what else, but I know I hear that quite often. So I like to start with, if something's not working or it's a bad experience, I ask, is this the intended behavior of this feature, right? Because perhaps it's a bug and they didn't know about it until I brought it up. Or maybe it is this is the intended behavior. Okay, let me give you an example. This is what my customer was trying to do. This was the experience they had, and this is the effect of that. They had a bad event. They weren't able to share their video, this or that. What solutions do you have, or what can we do to address this? So I think it's a lot of it is taking it a couple steps back, and instead of accusatory of this didn't work or hey, we have a problem. Well, it's still a problem, but framing it in ways that is just a little gentler oftentimes will build you some bridges to the product team to work with you better than, oh God, he's coming to me again with a complaint. So I think a lot of it's in wording as well.
Well, just like it's so important that we're empathetic to our customers and we understand, try and understand as best as we can their perspective, we have to do the same thing with the internal teams that we work with.
Yeah,
right. Absolutely. Whether it's product or sales or marketing.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, especially with the product team. I mean, we're hammering them with requests all the time, and oftentimes it comes off as like, hey, we really want this, and we want this for the customer. I mean, we want all of these things, but we have to have empathy for the product team. And I remind them of that. Like, listen, like we know you guys have a bunch of competing priorities and flooded with different feedback from various channels. So I think that's a really great point.
Right. Empathy being practiced toward a customer or to your internal colleagues, I feel like is practiced every day that I'm in the office or I'm on a phone call. But, you know, getting bad feedback or negative reviews about something, about your product or your service is not necessarily a bad thing. And it's something that we shouldn't be shy or ashamed of once we hear negative feedback. If customers are using the product and are taking the time to report this feedback, they're users of the product, which is also an indicator that, hey, these might be the folks we should be targeting during an alpha or a beta test, because they're willing to take the time to use it, to provide us the feedback that we need to hear to make a better product. We should keep them on a list to try and reach out to the next time we deploy something new. So all of this is all opportunity.
There's a book I read about a decade ago called Every Complaint is a Gift. I think
Yes.
that's the name of it. Yes. Right. And so it is a gift. These are customers, because for every one of these customers that complain, there's 10 or 12 of them that don't.
But don't, yep.
Right.
Exactly. And I would rather hear from 200 complaints versus, you know, nothing when something is all good under our assumption, and actually it's really not good happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, so, there's a statistic in a customer success book, the blue one I'm sure everybody's aware of. And it says that sometimes your most utilized or adopted customers are actually the ones that are most unhappy, because they are pushing your product to the limit. They're trying to get every buck out of it they can, and then some. So just because they look on metrics like, wow, 100%, 110% adopted, fantastic, I'm going to skip their call and take this customer who's 20%. Is that the most valuable use of your time? Probably not. So yeah, you're spot on. The customers who want to give you feedback are the ones you really should be listening to.
Yeah. This is one of the reasons why I'm a kind of a sidebar here. I'm a huge fan of NPS over the more traditional long customer sat surveys, because, you know, you reduce your response rate by 12.5% for every additional question you add to a survey. And I'd rather get half of my customers telling me something, giving me some sort of directional indicator of how they feel about my brand or my product, than, you know, 2 to 5% of my customers who are complaining and going out of the way, right? So it's not just about the complaining customers, it's about everybody, right? I want to give everybody an opportunity. So anyways, total sidebar. Thank you for that question, Srimati. The next one, from Carolina, what type of questions would you suggest using when qualifying why a customer wants a product feature developed?
A lot of whys.
Yeah.
A lot of whys, and really understanding the business impact. Is it taking? Are they burning time doing something that, you know, otherwise would save them time if you had a certain feature? So just getting to understand the pain, you know, and asking a lot of whys, I think, drill into the core problem.
Lots of open-ended questions, lots of active listening, having that conversation, right?
Definitely. I would probably ask, sorry, go ahead, Bethany.
No, take it.
I would probably ask, what are you doing today to accomplish that? As the catalyst of why they would want something with our service. So like, tell me what you're doing today to try to achieve your desired outcome, and how can we make it better?
Yeah.
And also understanding who, you know, it's easy to say so-and-so wants this feature, right? How many employees is this actually affecting? Who's the line of business, or what group is wanting this? If it's like the HR group because they have a separate process than the 98% of the company, and they're the ones that need this, well, let's take a look at this and really understand, you know, what are they trying to achieve? And something that I deal with constantly in my current job is most products have one or two like key use cases, right? You buy virtual meeting software to have virtual meetings. Okay, that makes sense. But then you start thinking about, oh, we're in remote COVID time. So how about sales teams now taking those? How about, you know, there's all of these other additional use cases that need to be uncovered, which is one of the key responsibilities of most of our jobs. So understanding the customer's current use cases and probing questions on what other softwares or applications are you using in the same realm of this product, and what are you doing with those can also help.
Yeah, not only can it help expand your current feature set, it's opportunities for cross-sell, upsell, expansion revenue as well, right? So once again, that consultative, open-ended questions, help me understand more about what what you're trying to achieve, right? And let me help you connect the dots between what you're trying to achieve and what we can provide to you, whether it's part of the product right now or it's something that's on our product roadmap. Thank you, Carolina. I'm sorry if I butchered your name there, but thank you for that. As an add-on, Becca asks, do you recommend digital surveys or more personal phone calls to gather feedback?
I think this is highly dependent upon the customer's culture of how their organization. Some love email and they still have a problem with video and face-to-face, but they're all about email. Others want those face-to-face interactions. So I think the more you can learn the customer's culture and how they communicate is a good deciding factor of if you want to go the live or the survey route. So I think that's the first thing to take into consideration.
Audrey, how did you mentioned that you were doing this recently. How do you do that?
Yes, so to reach a number of people at one time, we would do digital surveys. That way we can identify, potentially the target segment we wanted to hear back from or the potential new segment we wanted to sell into. And so some of those questions involve knowing who that persona is. Tell me a little bit about yourself and who you are to your organization. What role do you play? What responsibilities do you have? Are you the key end user? Are you the decision maker? Just tell me more about yourself so that product and design can actually put themselves in that person's shoes when they start crafting and scoping and designing. And a lot of it has to deal with the types of questions that we want to ask. And typically we use third-party services to help, be out of the box to survey our customers, to make that analysis for us, because we find that if we do it internally, and as frequently as we do, we tend to get lost in the weeds. We tend to make these assumptions straight away, and we want to try to remove ourselves from that. And that's why we always enlist in a third-party service to assist.
I think sometimes too, a combination of surveys and in-person phone calls are the right way to go. So we send out a quarterly HAT survey, happiness tracking survey is what we call it. And oftentimes we'll use that as an opportunity for either a PM or a CSM to engage the customer, depending on the nature of the feedback, and then drill in further to really understand what's going on.
And I'll give one more follow-up because I see a few of the questions are pertaining to the same topic. And the ask was, besides in-person or emails or surveys, how do you facilitate or what product do you use? There is, it's probably one of many. It's called AHA, A-H-A, and it's a feature request. It can be internal facing, it can be customer facing. In fact, we started with it being internal only, so it was up to customer success managers and account team members to enter on behalf of the customer of the ideas that they would like to see. Now we have it where customers can go to this portal themselves and enter them. And what I really like about it, besides being like the run-of-the-mill, what do you want to see? What product is it? The follow-up options, right? So it goes from it was submitted to it has been reviewed to we need more information, so product team needs to get a better understanding, to not likely to implement, which is extremely important to know, or future consideration, or it's been planned. So it will be reviewed by the product team, and the idea will be as it goes along the life cycle of that idea, updated to where it's going to end up in a future release or not. And customers have reacted very positively to see that, besides just, hey, this is what I want to see happen, and then you never hear again. You kind of get to follow that idea to either fruition or the grave. Yeah,
so AHA is a great product for that. User Voice is another one. I remember Salesforce back in the day, really dating myself. Salesforce used to have their ideas functionality. I don't know if they still, I'm not sure if they still have that, where you could post something and upvote it. Do any of you, anybody else, Jake or Audrey, do you use some sort of tool?
We've started internally. Well, obviously we use Jira quite a bit internally, but we've also started using Product Board to easily grab feedback. As far as like customer facing, I've seen some teams use Jira for that as well. Canny is a big one. Canny.io, I believe, is the website where you can spin up a super lightweight feedback sort of survey thing. But yeah, I think there's a bunch of tools sort of coming out in that space right now.
We use a homegrown product that we've built in the product. So at any time within our issue platform, someone can actually click on feedback, and then it would get sent directly into Slack, where everyone in the organization can get the response in real time.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of using tools like Slack. If you use Slack or even Microsoft Teams, setting up a channel that is specifically focused on feedback. And it needs to be, both good feedback and bad feedback. And once again, it needs to be positioned, the bad feedback needs to be positioned not as a finger pointing, but just, hey, here's feedback we're getting. But it needs to be a mixture. It's not just a channel where people go to complain. Nobody wants to read that, right? It needs to be a combination. And that's something I think you need to be really cognizant about if you're going to set something up like that in your organization as a customer success manager, because you're going to get a higher volume typically of complaints because people love to complain, right? But then the praise, which is why we need to make sure we're posting the praise when we get it, yes, and we're asking for that praise when it sounds like it's coming our way. Great. Thank you for those questions. That was Becca. And so Danielle's posted, I think, more of a statement, but would love to get your input on this, as well as Katie's got a question, I think, that tie in. So Danielle says, we have executive business reviews every 6 months. For mine, I invite someone from the product team to take an hour and walk the client through our roadmap so they know what we as a company are working on, which I think is a great strategy. It's all about expectation management. This always leads to product and the clients having side calls and UX participation. It's a great method to keep both sides engaged. I couldn't agree more. That's a great best practice. Danielle, thank you for sharing that. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
I think that's fantastic. Yeah, it takes away this. I mean, it depends on the size of your organization. I think some CSMs have to wear all of those hats, right? And they have to do the roadmap, do their job, product support, the whole 9 yards. But if you have team members in your organization to help with that, they are the true product expert. I'm not a product expert. Sometimes I feel like I am, but I'm really focused on, adoption and barriers and those kind of things. So having somebody there that can answer their questions and not, I'm going to have to get back with you on that, is much better in a QBR, an executive business review, to have the expert there.
Yes, at any time I would have product join any meetings, specifically in EBR, if they can. And if the head of product can't join, then one of the PMs or the POs comes and joins along with us. I also think it's important too to understand your customers, not necessarily roadmap, but what their goals are for the next quarter or for the next fiscal year. So that way we have a better understanding of how our products would synergize with theirs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the PM team joining those roadmap calls is really useful, assuming you're able to facilitate that, because they bring the strategy side of the conversation, right? Oftentimes, like, we might have the roadmap in front of us, we know what's coming down the pipeline, but we don't always have the in-depth strategy reason as to why we're building something. Maybe it's aligning with something else in the org, and so the PM can really speak to that, which is useful.
Now, I want to drill into that customer roadmap. The customer roadmap point you made, Audrey. But before we do, kind of a add-on to the last comment was, how do you recommend? And we already talked about a strategy for this. But how do you recommend encouraging product teams to join calls when they're reticent to be in front of customers? And we already talked about one strategy, setting expectations, reassuring them. Any other strategies that you've used to get product onto a customer call when they're hesitant?
When the product team is hesitant?
When the product team is hesitant. Or is it just, hey, don't worry about it. We're going to make sure to run interference for you?
No, that would actually, to be frank, that would actually bother me if someone in products would shy away from joining a customer call. I mean, in order to understand how a customer is using something that they are building or improving upon, it would serve in their best interest to hear from customers the hows, the whys, the whens of using their product that they are building and they own. It would be a disservice if they didn't. Yeah. And I would just kindly encourage, hey, this is your job, my job. We can do this together. Bad cop, good cop, whoever you need me to be, I'll be it. But I really think you should be on the call. That way you can hear firsthand how our customers are using this awesome products that you're building.
And I think sometimes there still are silos that exist. I mean, as much as we want to be connected, we have our own priorities and our own expectations, et cetera. So I think a lot of the time, in regards to that question, it needs to flow up to the organization to build that tighter alignment with one another, to say we have to partner together. And when it's coming from leadership down, it's not going to be as easy to say, oh, I don't have time to meet with you, or that's not part of my job. And it's been a challenge for me, and it continues to be, but it's getting better. And so let it be on yourself. If you're seeing that you're not getting them to attend meetings or they're not replying to your feedback, you can be the leader. A leader is what you do. It's not just a title of emailing your manager, emailing their manager. Hey, my customer is suffering, or I'm noticing that we're not getting the alignment that we like. What ideas do you have? Or is there another approach that I should take? Because I really care, about our product and our customers. It's a joint customer. So, I think sometimes going up a little bit through the leadership ladder helps get people on the right track of where we should be working together.
Mm-hmm. I try to standardize it too. I mean, if it becomes that big of an issue, you can try and standardize it. If your organization is small enough, maybe make it a company-wide practice where folks join and participate in a customer call once a month. Or if your organization is huge, like Cisco and Atlassian are, then maybe make it a department standardization where everyone has to participate. So that way they don't feel so isolated or siloed out. Just standardize it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think in that situation in particular, if you have a group, a person, a team that's hesitant, and you've tried everything you can to allay their fears and get them on the call, then honestly, you gotta escalate that. And I personally think, depending on how your organization is, what your culture is and how it's organized, usually you would escalate that to your manager and let your manager go deal with that. But once again, I think we need to be really careful about how we approach that, and taking the product team's perspective and using that empathy that we in customer success have an abundance of. That's why we're doing this job. We've got a high EQ, that we're not approaching this as a finger pointing exercise. This is all about trying to do the right thing for the company and for the customer, and approaching it with kid gloves. So what we don't want to do in the process of trying to get something like that unstuck is create a problem. Mm-hmm. Especially with product.
Yeah, hopefully you have a good enough relationship with the product team too, where they have a little bit of empathy for you. If you're asking for help, hey, please join me on this call to speak to whatever. Hopefully, I mean, I've never come across a time where anybody said no to that. And I credit that a lot to the relationships that I've built with the product team too. So,
well, you're bringing them value, right? You're not just showing up and saying, here's a product feature. You're providing that within the framework of a user story, a business case, the downside potential of not doing something, the upside potential of doing something. I mean, you're wrapping that all together in a nice box and walking in with not only the ask, but the facts and the details underneath it to support why that ask is important. Mm-hmm. Cool. So let's talk back about the customer roadmap. Carolina again asks, and she got a few upvotes, where in the customer lifecycle would you bring in the topic of a customer roadmap? And how would this differ from low touch to high touch customers?
I think regardless if you're low or high touch, the moment that you are introduced as a CSM, whether it's a brand new account or one that has been transitioned a million times, I think you kind of that's your opportunity to set the scene of what you do and who you are and why you're in that account. And I think we always feel comfortable with like, how do you like your experience? Is there any problems I can help you with? And we can so quickly like pigeonhole ourselves into we're product support, or we're going to help you troubleshoot your issues. So I think setting that scene from the get-go of, hey, now you don't want to throw them off guard. Sometimes customers are not prepared when you say, let's have an intro call, and then your second question is, so what's your 2-year roadmap? They're not prepared for that. Again, sometimes they don't know, or it's been changed, or they're not the right audience. So ding, ding, ding. Now you're going to start getting the right audience in of who you need to build those relationships with to understand. So I think as early on as possible, and when you send out that agenda or meeting invite ahead of time, tell them these are the things that I'd like to talk about with you or to explore together. Whether you have a success plan or, there's a million names for them, but there's usually some kind of template where you track what their goals are and their barriers are, what they're hoping to achieve. All of that kind of fits into what their roadmap is. Now, if this question is pertaining to a customer roadmap, yes. And then there's opportunities, obviously, once you have theirs, saying, how does ours align with it?
Yeah, and today, like with cloud products, they're changing so often, and the roadmap's constantly changing. I find myself always talking about the roadmap. It's like anytime I'm on the call, there's some sort of reference to the roadmap. So I haven't really thought specifically about, when the best time is. It's sort of just always a hot topic, really.
Yeah, Jake. By the way, Jake. Oh, there you go. You're out of focus there for a minute.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah, I thought I had too much to drink this morning. So you brought up Bethany. I love the mention of the success plan. I mean, that's what your success plan is there for, right? It's like the center, the Venn diagram, right? Where the customer's objectives and desired outcomes meet what the product can do and how we're going to get there and the milestones that we need to hit on the way. And so you're hopefully integrating that customer roadmap from the get-go. And every time that you're meeting with your customer, that you're having that success plan review, maybe it's during your enterprise business reviews, maybe it's more often, what have you, depending on where you're at in the customer life cycle, you're reviewing that and making sure, hey, are we on track? Okay, what's happened now? What's changed? What direction are you going in now? And you're always adjusting it.
Yeah, I think it's crucial that you have to intertwine your own roadmap, CS roadmap, and then the customer roadmap. And when you have those checkpoints, making sure that you are hitting those milestones at the same time is crucial. That's why they choose you as their partner, right? And that's why they see you as the trusted advisor. And the more milestones you can hit because your roadmaps are aligned and intertwined, the likelihood of them renewing with you becomes greater. And that's all of our goals, right? Is to extend the lifetime value of all of our customers within our own organizations. So it's all a benefit.
Yeah, our job in customer success is to create an environment where the customer is going to want to renew and expand, but it's about creating that environment. One last question I think we got time for, and then we'll wrap things up. From James, I have recently been part of an M&A. We have 1,000+ customers, but we are the small cog in the new machine. What are some good ways to converse with our customers that our roadmap is not what it was 6 months ago, and we're going in a direction that they were not privy to when they signed their initial contract with us? Sounds like can be a pretty challenging situation. Any ideas?
I think if your roadmap happens to change half a year out after executing the contract, I think knowing the customer's roadmap, this is where it becomes essential and pivotal, because if the roadmap is changing, maybe what you're changing it to still is applicable to the customer's roadmap and their vision and why they chose to partner with you in the first place. There are ways that you can pitch and really just try to analyze whether or not this new roadmap will work for them. And it's okay if it doesn't, because again, you'll be doing a disservice for them if it didn't and you weren't upfront about it. So take the time to understand what the roadmap is, why it's changing, what are the business objectives for your own organization, and see how many of those might be impacted in your customer base. You have 1,000 of them, and 5 of them might be impacted. That's not that bad of a ratio, but you still want to take the time to understand where that intertwinement could possibly be moving forward.
And depending on, again, your organization and how you're structured, I mean, that's a tough situation or scenario to be in. I know, obviously, Cisco's quite big, but we have groups that help create collateral that's going to help empower us CSMs to have those tough conversations. So, you know, when we're looking at competitive threats, Zoom, you know, what are they doing? What can I have at my disposal to say, you know, this is how we perform better, or this is how we can help overcome that. And so I think if a roadmap has suddenly changed, that's a huge endeavor for the CSM and the account team to take on, like, oh, how do we pivot now? So if you have a team there, or maybe you want to be the voice of, hey, can you guys help us with some key talking points or a landscape to say how this is going to actually benefit them? I don't think that should be on the sole shoulders of a CSM. And if it is, I mean, good luck to you do your research. And again, all the advice that Audrey said will certainly help.
Yeah, agree. There needs to be, you know, once again, if you're building a good relationship with your product team, if you're providing value, like Jake mentioned, to them, hopefully they're going to be able to help you and provide value to you. That is not something that you should be tasked with on your own. That should be something that is being discussed and the messaging discussed and detailed out at the management level of product and customer success. Likely marketing and sales as well are in that discussion. How are we going to message this? And then you need to be willing and able to message that, you know, because once again, as customer success managers, we have to be able to deliver bad news and be able to push back. But hopefully, if we've been given the details of what's happening, what's changing, what's not going to happen, and we've been given a good narrative, then we can position it appropriately. We can position workarounds. We can, you know, we can figure it out. So information is power. Okay, so we're at the end of the hour. I want to thank our guests for joining us today. I want to thank all of you out there for being here and asking questions. We still got a lot of questions left. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them. But thank you, Audrey, Bethany, and Jake, for the time. One final note, great CSMs know they don't have all the answers, but they know where to get them. And that's why we created CSM Mastermind, to harness the knowledge and experience of the community to help improve everyone. So I hope you got something out of this discussion, and we'll see you at our next event on September 23rd, when we'll discuss executing a flawless onboarding experience for customers. Check out successcoaching.co to find out more and to sign up. Have a great rest of your day and week. Stay safe and stay healthy, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. See ya.